What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul.
Welcome, everyone, to the analysis of the Old Testament survey. This is the after show where we discuss a little bit more in depth about a few different points of each of the books. We're on 2 Samuel now, and hopefully you just watched Pastor Gavin's synopsis of 2 Samuel, and now you've tuned into this. Thank you for doing that. Leave us a comment. We'll talk about it in a comment show if we get some people that respond. Visit Marcus Fredrickson. He does the music in and out of every episode of this series and the Boiling Point podcast, reverbnation.com/Marcus Fredrickson. And please check out our storefront, bonfire.com/store/the Boiling Point podcast. Pick up some apparel and support the show so that we can continue to make this series and many other shows for your enjoyment. Pastor Gavin, 2 Samuel, there's a few points that I definitely would like to hit on. And the first one is going to be, you mentioned the Ark of the Covenant in that book, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What is the Ark of the Covenant?
The Ark of the Covenant is it's like a chest that was in the tabernacle, and later, when Solomon built a temple, it was in the temple, in the area of the temple called the Holy of Holies, or the Most Holy Place, it's also called. And that was a place where only the high priest could go once a year, and even after he had made the appropriate sacrifices. And so that's the Ark of the Covenant contained the actual tablets that the Ten Commandments were written on, and a sample of the manna that God had rained down, from heaven for the children of Israel, and also Aaron's rod that had budded. It also contained that as well. But the main thing it contained was the table, the Ten Commandments. And so there in the Holy of Holies, it was the place where God symbolized his presence with the people of Israel. So, a lot of people wonder, where is the Ark today? And
that was my next question.
Yeah, so it's not really like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And like the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about here, right?
No. Well, I mean, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant, but it seemed like in those movies they kind of mixed pagan gods with it,
Gotcha.
So there's an archaeologist named Ron Wyatt, who he believes he was in a cave that went underneath where he believes Christ was crucified. He claims that he saw it under there. So I don't know if that's actually what it was or not. And then there's a church somewhere in Ethiopia where they claim that they have the Ark of the Covenant, and then they've been guarding it generation after generation, underneath their church in an underground cavern or cave or something of that nature. And so I don't know which is true. We really don't know for certain.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, but one day there's going to be a temple that will be rebuilt by the Jewish people. And, I would imagine they'll find it then.
Okay, okay. Now, is that speculation on your part?
Well, the fact that the temple will be rebuilt, that's not speculation, because the scriptures teach that. But whether or not they'll find the original Ark or make a new one, it's speculation on my part that they'll probably, like God will reveal to them where it is.
Yeah. I just didn't know. I just didn't know if you were getting that from scripture or if you were just speculating on that point. Remember, that's something we like to do when Pastor Gavin and I talk. Is there's fact, and then there's speculation, and then there's sensationalization.
Right. And
And
we
so we
don't
like to, and we don't,
sensationalize.
yes, we don't sensationalize
Yeah.
here. We don't, that's the point we avoid.
Mhm.
So now, did I hear you correctly while you were talking? David had multiple wives.
Yeah.
Now,
Um, yeah.
go
Yes.
ahead. If you have something to
Yeah.
comment on right there, yeah, go ahead.
Well, people back then did. Now, God warned the people, like especially the kings of Israel, not to multiply into themselves wives. And it was always God's plan, one man and one woman for life.
Okay.
But as time went on, sometimes men married multiple wives, and it was a part of their culture. And I think that God was more tolerant of that because it wasn't as clearly revealed to them that it's wrong. Like now, you read in the New Testament where it gives qualifications for
Yeah.
church leaders.
Okay.
It says he has to be the husband of, the husband of one wife. In other words, no more polygamy. So that's very clear, but it wasn't as clear in the Old
In the Old
Testament.
Testament. Okay.
Right.
So it was a little looser in the Old Testament.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if I could speculate to you for a moment as to why, and was all speculation on my part, could it be because of the times? This is back when
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
population of the world was very small compared to now,
Yeah.
and often men being the hunters gatherers, especially during that time, men would die, go off to war,
Mhm.
and so women would often outnumber the men in cities and stuff. Could that
Yeah.
just be, that's just speculation on my part, but could that
Yes.
have
Yeah.
some,
Yep. So sometimes, the men would marry the women because their husbands got killed and they had no one to take care of them. And, then they would have more kids as well. So, yeah. Now, for kings, if you were a king, like later on, it says about Solomon, like Solomon was very wealthy. And it says he had 700 wives and 300 concubines.
wow.
Um, so why would you need that many? Well, some of it was like a status symbol. Hey, look at me, how wealthy I am. I have all these wives.
Yeah.
And then I'm having all these kids by a lot of these wives. So, I'm a big dude.
Yeah.
Uh, but also part of it was if you were a king and there was a kingdom near you, like a city state type kingdom, and you didn't want to have any war and you wanted to make sure that there was peace, maybe the king of that city would give you his daughter as a wife. So if you were married, you were family, so you wouldn't attack that city. So some of these were probably the result of military alliances. Now, I'm getting off to King Solomon, but David, one of his wives, um, her husband died, and David saw that she was a very good woman. So as soon as he found out that her husband died, he married her. So I think that was Abigail, yeah. And her husband was like a real obstinate, hard to get along with guy. So yeah, so if I counted correctly, and I believe I have, I think David had 5 wives at the time that he committed adultery with Bathsheba. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you got to figure that even if God's a little lenient back at that time on how many wives you can have, and you can have 5 wives, and you have 5 wives, cheating on your 5 wives
Yeah.
just seems really, I mean, doesn't that just seem a little bit blatant, I guess, at that
Yeah.
point,
That,
right?
that makes it even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And now if I
Yeah.
could because that's kind of there's a history of that in human history of
Mhm.
marrying multiple women and procreating and spreading and spreading the seed and creating a larger population. As do you just, again, speculation on my part, do you think that that's why sometimes we see struggles with some of that today, or do you think it's more of a culture thing than it is because it's in our history?
Well, uh, it's Christianity, I believe that sort of put the light on the fact that polygamy isn't God's way. So like, in Muslim countries today, there are a lot of Muslim countries. My understanding is where they still have multiple wives. Polygamy is still practiced. So I think that's mainly due to the influence of Christianity, because Christianity made it clear that God's ideal plan is just one man and one woman. In the Garden of Eden, it was Adam and it was Eve,
Yeah.
and then the New Testament affirms that. Yeah.
So you think the reason why it seems to be such a struggle in today's world is because more of a societal thing than it is because it's in our history or in our past or anything like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, Mormonism used to teach multiple wives.
Well,
In fact,
that's still
yeah,
practiced, I believe, in Utah. I believe some
yeah,
places in Utah still. Yeah.
yeah. They're really not supposed to. My understanding is it's still against the law, but I think some Mormons do that, and that was one of their big doctrines because they believe that you got to have a lot of babies to create spirit babies that'll help you when you rule over your planet one day. Or it's really wild, it's out there, and
Yeah.
I so yeah, so there's still some cultures today that practice it, but it's definitely not a Christian doctrine.
And the New Testament it reaffirms that with Scripture. So
Yeah, yeah.
okay, now there's a couple of uh, like we do in some episodes where I challenge what you said on some
Mm,
things, and of course it's done out of respect. It's done to help teach people and help people understand what it is that you're
right.
saying.
Because someone
So
else might have the same question. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mm,
So these next 2 points that I'm going to talk on are not just simple questions, but you said that David failed. David was a very godly man, and he
mm.
still failed. How
Yeah.
is this again? It's a loaded question, but someone is going to be thinking this in their head if they watched that first episode. I know they are. If God is all knowing, all powerful, why did he let David fall? Well, how can a godly man fail with if God's in control and a godly man? How can that happen?
Good question. Well, see, even though David was a godly man and he loved the Lord, like he still had what the Bible calls the flesh. And the New Testament talks about the flesh, that the flesh desires against what the Spirit of God desires, and the Spirit of God desires against what the flesh desires. The flesh refers to the sinful aspects of our human nature. And so even though we love the Lord, we still have some sin within us. And so even though David was a godly man and loved the Lord, there was just a moment of weakness where rather than yielding to and obeying the Lord, he just gave in to the flesh, like he gave in to his sinful desires. And so, like, what he should have done was whenever he first saw her, he should have said, "Man, I don't even want to watch that. I'm a married man. I know that would be displeasing to the Lord." But he didn't. And so then, as he kept, watching her, I mean, you and I who are guys, we could understand, the appeal to that of the flesh. I mean, I have no desire to do anything like that, but you could understand why. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, normal guys are attracted to women. So,
yeah,
and so that was the weakness of the flesh. And of course, Satan knows that could have been David's weakness. And so he was just, in a moment of carelessness, he just chose to love himself at that moment more than he loved the Lord. So he put himself before the Lord. So, you and I who are saved and love the Lord, sometimes we do that,
yeah.
we
We're not perfect.
yeah, right. We don't want to, but we haven't arrived at sinless perfection yet. And
Yeah,
if you would have uh, talked to David early that morning and told him what he was going to do,
he
he
probably
would have
wouldn't have
said,
believed
"Oh,
it.
no way, no
Yeah.
way." So yeah, we don't know else what was going on in his life that made him vulnerable to that temptation. But we do know this. It says in First Corinthians, I think it's 10:13. It says, "There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man." And in other words, we can't ever have a temptation where we'd say, "Man, this is something no one else has ever experienced," because everyone else has experienced the things we go through. Maybe their name is different, they're in a different place, but we all struggle with different kinds of temptations, and we're not the only ones. But it says, "But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it." So, in other words, God will never allow us to be tempted beyond our ability to resist it and say no.
Really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, God won't allow that.
So
So
then what
David
happens?
could have said no, but he chose not to. David could have turned away and, said, "Man, I don't want
Okay.
to." But
I
but
see what
he
you're,
did.
so if I can understand what you just said, I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Hmm.
God only tempts us as much as we can handle, meaning that he
Okay,
doesn't.
God. Wait. Let me stop you there.
Okay.
The Bible says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I'm tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." So God doesn't tempt us. But
Gotcha.
maybe
Okay.
what, but I think what you probably meant to say was that, God will only allow us to be tempted.
Yes, I think yes, that is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
So God will only allow us to be tempted as
Yeah.
much as we can handle.
Right. Yeah.
So anybody who's being tempted has still at least somewhere inside them has the
Mhm.
ability to say no.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that means that if we sin, we can't blame God. It's our own fault. But the good part of that is if we're responsible, then that means we can win over it. But if we're going to blame the devil or blame the flesh or blame God, well, then we could never get the victory because it's not our fault, so we're helpless. So
Yeah.
that's the wrong way to look at it. Yeah.
Self-responsibility is the way to look
Yeah.
at it. That's
Yeah.
what God teaches us, about it's
Yeah.
about ourselves, and we do have free choice, and we have to make those choices.
Right. Yeah. So that's how a godly man can sin if he's just careless and when sin is before him and he's being tempted and we're tempted, at that moment we got to say, "Wait, not my will but thine be done." And God, what you want and what you say is more important than me and what I want and the stupid sinful desires of the
Yeah.
flesh. So Lord, I want to obey you. And if we're struggling with sin or with temptation, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to pray and ask God to help us. Like in Hebrews, I think it's chapter 4, it says, it talks about Jesus being our high priest. It says, we don't have a high priest who can't be touched with the feelings of our weaknesses. He was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So Jesus was tempted, but he never sinned. So let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may find mercy and grace to help in time of need. So what that's saying is, hey, if we sin, we're to come to God and confess it and ask His forgiveness. If we're struggling with temptation, uh, and we feel weak and like we're going to give in, we should pray, Lord, please. I don't know why I'm feeling this. I know it's wrong. I don't want to do what's wrong. I don't even want to be tempted to do what's wrong. Please help me and give me the strength. I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. But
Yeah.
did David do that? No.
No, he
Um,
just gave in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And there's about three things that you just said there that I could probably go off on tangents on, but I don't want to. We're already running this episode longer than the actual synopsis of the book we just covered. So I'm going to put those in my pocket and save those for later. One
yeah,
last thing though. You said it because of his sin. Uh, God told him that a child was going to die.
yeah.
I want to be which child, whose was it?
Yeah, that was the child that was conceived by their adultery.
By their adultery.
Yeah.
Okay, and now my
Yeah, so
follow-up question.
Bathsheba was pregnant to David. And so the Uriah the Hittite was killed, because David basically used the sword to kill him. Not directly, but
Yeah,
I mean, if he sent him out and you know, told Joab, hey, put him out by the city wall and then quickly withdraw.
yeah,
Well, yeah.
yeah. He knew what was going to happen.
So when that child was born, David prayed and asked God to save the child's life, but God said no. So
So, and now my
the
follow-up
child,
to that is
hmm,
does God often punish children for the sins of their father? Yes, I loaded that question and asked it in a way that other people would ask it.
yeah, yeah, good questioning, good way to phrase it too. Well, God doesn't punish children for the sins of their fathers, but children can be affected by their father's sins.
Okay.
So that it's not that child was being punished because of David and Bathsheba's adultery, but as a result of it, God was going to take the child, as a discipline to David and Bathsheba. So it wasn't that the child was being punished for their sins, but the child was affected by their sins. But
Okay.
if you look at it this way, that child went to heaven. Like
Yeah.
that child went to be with the Lord in God's presence. Now, how do we know that? Well, they said to David, "Hey, David, the child's dead," and David said, "I shall go to him, but he shall not return me." So, in other words, when David would die, he would go to paradise. Well, that's where the child would be too. Like I believe the teaching of scriptures that little children go to heaven. So was that so bad for that child that he was taken directly to heaven? I mean, he kind of got off lucky. He missed
Yeah.
out on a lot of bad things in this world, and so yeah. So yeah, good question. The child, in spite of how it might look to some people, the child was affected by the parent's sin, but not okay. I'm gonna instead of punishing David and Bathsheba, I'm gonna punish the child. No, God didn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yep, that's the last point that I wanted to hit on there. I think we just about covered everything and then some here for Second Samuel. Our after show went way longer than the synopsis of the book went, but that's okay. I think we talked about some great things. Please leave us a comment if you have any questions yourself. We'll be happy to do a Q&A episode and answer some of your questions. And we're still talking about maybe doing a live episode once we've completed the entire series. So look for that. And they come out, they release every Sunday night on the Boiling Point podcast channels, YouTube, Rumble, and they air every Wednesday night on Pastor Gavin's channel, is when they'll be released on Pastor Gavin's YouTube channel. And then the after show will release on the opposite. Like for Sunday, the Pastor Gavin's portion will air on the Boiling Point podcast channel. And Sunday night, the after show will air on Pastor Gavin's channel. Wednesday, his portion airs on his channel, and then the after show will be put on my channel. I probably just confused everybody. And that's where we'll leave it there. Marcus Fredrickson does the music. Make sure you check him out, reverbnation.com/Marcus Fredrickson. The name of the song is called Free. Make sure you give it a listen and share it out. Make sure you also please check out our storefront, bonfire.com/store/the Boiling Point podcast. Pick up some apparel and help support us. Please hit the like button, hit the share button. Facebook is still trying to crush us. We need your help to continue to grow our shows, and that's Pastor Gavin too. Make sure you look for Pastor Gavin. Just search Gavin Whitcomb Sr. on YouTube. You can find his channel there. I am not your host on this series. I am the analyst of the Old Testament Survey. Pastor Gavin is the host of the Old Testament Survey. And that's the end.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, my soul? Lord of bliss, to bear the grace